Story 1. I recently met up with a good friend of mine, who is one of the players in a Shadowrun 3rd edition game I run. She prefers to be called Gypsy, even though Roma is considered a more politically correct term. She has several valid and strong reasons for this preference. Both my friend and I were dressed casually, so we definitely didn't look like store employees. I'm a big guy, tall and overweight. While I'm not as heavy as some obese people you might see, I do move a bit slowly, standing at almost 190 centimeters and weighing around 100 kilograms. I'm not particularly intimidating. My friend is shorter, at about 170 centimeters, but with a muscular build. She's still taller than Karen, who is around 160 centimeters or less. Even though my friend is a woman, she can be very intimidating. Having previously worked in a jail, she prefers dealing with the worst kinds of criminals to avoid the drama that often comes with female inmates. Although she doesn't always have her ideal job, she frequently has to deal with difficult people, including many Karens. As we discussed our game and her character, my friend had her tablet in hand with a spreadsheet open on it. Then, Karen entered the scene. She was already yelling on the phone, her face red with anger. Back then, we hadn't yet encountered Karen stories, so we didn't immediately recognize her as a Karen. But we did recognize her as someone who was likely to cause trouble. We decided to nickname her Miss Insignificant. In our Shadowrun game, we prefer to play the 3rd edition rather than later versions. We often discuss alternative campaign types and point out where certain rules, like Matrix rules, are better. We enjoy creating detailed characters with depth, making them feel like living people in the game world. Sometimes, we even draw inspiration from the people we encounter in real life for our non-playable characters. We quickly decided that Karen seemed like a very insignificant person in her day-to-day life. Trying to compensate for this by acting entitled and rude, Karen made sure everyone around her noticed her, ensuring they all had an opinion. She was likely preoccupied with being late, angry, and unable to find what she needed. After finishing her phone call, Karen decided she needed help and assumed we should be the ones to assist her. Unfortunately, she hadn't learned basic manners, so she didn't start with a simple "excuse me" or anything polite. "Karen, you too. Help me find this and that, now." Since my friend was busy with her tablet, it fell to me to respond. "Me? We don't know where it is. We don't work here, and we don't have time to help you." "Karen, do you know who I am?" I didn't respond with a customer service smile. I didn't know who she was, but I was sure she wasn't very important. Perhaps an unimportant secretary or someone similar. Unfortunately, like many Karens we've read about since, she chose not to listen. "Me, someone who hasn't Lee." Before I could finish, she slapped me. She likely didn't want to hear that she hadn't learned a few things, including manners. I was shocked and starting to get angry. Hungarian is a very expressive language, but when it comes to cursing, gypsies, especially women, can be even more colorful and skilled. Their curses often name demons responsible for various diseases. However, despite her anger and sense of entitlement, my friend wasn't in a work-related mindset yet, as the situation was both shocking and unexpected. At that moment, Karen decided to grab my friend's tablet and yell, "Now that you don't have that distraction, you should." Since it was another surprise move, she succeeded in taking the tablet. She quickly forgot her shopping needs, focusing solely on winning the conflict over the tablet and proving her superiority. It was a bad situation. My first instinct was to start recording everything. Unfortunately, even though we could try to hold Karen back until the police arrived, we weren't allowed to use any force that might harm her to retrieve the tablet. That wouldn't be considered self-defense. Even holding her back could be risky unless she attempted to flee. Waiting for security? Waiting for store staff? Calling the police? None of these options seemed particularly effective. Karen managed to shout about how she was going to lecture us, explaining that's why she took the tablet. She also made some racist comments. Although a verbal warning about severe consequences frightened Karen, it didn't convince her to return the tablet. Instead, she ran. She had a bit of a head start, and by pushing a shopping cart in our direction, she widened that gap. Grabbing other carts or pulling items off shelves to create barriers helped her escape, but my friend chased after her. The store manager saw Karen screaming that a gypsy was trying to rob her, beat her, and so on, while my friend claimed that Karen had robbed her. The manager also saw me, a big white guy, trying to run after my friend. When my friend managed to catch up with Karen, the manager instructed the security guard to stop my friend. Initially, the guard tried to stop both Karen and my friend, which would have been the normal procedure. Unfortunately, the manager told him to catch my friend and let Karen flee. It was a split-second decision, but a very bad one. Normally, you're expected to cooperate with the security guard and the store manager, who would usually stop both parties, allowing for a calm resolution. However, since Karen had already caused so much trouble, the manager was already red with anger and too emotional to think straight or distinguish right from wrong. When a manager lets a thief or robber, as she had grabbed the tablet by force and was violent earlier, go and uses excessive force, unwarranted by the situation, that's clearly a point where you're no longer expected to endure such an ordeal, right? Sort of. Self-defense without any warning would be out of line, as it wouldn't be necessary self-defense. Even though the manager and the guard broke the law, they likely weren't aware of it at the time, and escalating the situation wouldn't be helpful. Me. You should release my friend immediately. She did nothing wrong. It was a simple statement directed at the manager while my friend tried to reason with the guard. Stupid manager. No, she tried to rob that woman. You two will pay for all the damage to the store. She will be in jail for robbery, and you will be there for helping her. He was yelling. Me, I have recorded some of it. Stupid manager, so do our security cameras, you jerk. He was still yelling. Me, more proof to prove you wrong. If you don't stop this, you will face legal consequences. This is your first and only warning. Stupid manager to security guard. Catch that woman for helping that other woman too. Me to security guard, if you try that. Security guard, I can hold you back till the cops come. Me. You would be committing a crime, and we would act in self-defense. Stupid manager yelling towards security guard. I told you to catch that woman. Their kind helps robbers. Oh, so he thought I was a lawyer. Well, I'm a guy. Too bad I mentioned self-defense and defending others as options. Too bad it didn't seem like a credible option so far. I had been mostly calm, and my friend hadn't even resisted physically. So, acting in self-defense didn't seem like a credible threat. The security guard had 3 people yelling at him, the manager, me, and my friend. He was unable to listen. The manager was furious because of the destruction, acted prejudiced, and clearly wasn't thinking straight. But the next moment, everything changed quickly. I had warned them about the possibility of self-defense, so my friend ended up on top of the security guard. You can guess what happened next. When they tried to protest, we simply said that we had warned them about the possibility of self-defense and that both their video and ours would prove we were the victims. They had helped the criminal. One was discriminatory, and the other used excessive force illegally. The security guard quickly understood and apologized, saying he was just following orders. He blamed his job for his actions. I decided to be a bit witty and asked what kind of crime he wouldn't commit on the manager's orders. I pointed out that if 2 people accuse each other, he should stop both of them. I also mentioned that since the issue was about the tablet, it would have made sense to keep the tablet there. What he did was unprofessional, unethical, and unlawful, regardless of who did what. He got my point and started apologizing again, while the manager ranted, complained, and whined. My friend called the police and the other relevant authorities. It was time to show the video, which clearly revealed that Karen had stolen the tablet and acted offensively. The security guard apologized once more. Since he was the only one not completely emotional and managed to understand what had happened, he quickly informed the approaching store employees that we had acted within our rights, all while the manager continued to whine. Security guard to stupid manager. Do you want to end up in jail? Stupid manager, why would I? Security guard. For discrimination. Stupid manager, it isn't a crime. Technically, that's true. Discrimination itself isn't a crime, but the store could be fined for it. Asking the guard to stop me when I wasn't a threat with a discriminatory comment might be a crime. Too many discriminatory comments publicly could also be a crime. But breaking professional rules, including rules prohibiting discrimination, can lead to legal trouble if it creates certain risks, and using force against the guard could create those risks. I hope you see my point. How the manager helped a thief get away with stolen property might also lead to legal consequences, and if it happened because of prejudice, that's another problem. However, I doubt he would be jailed for all of it. So they ended up arguing, and the manager didn't even apologize. We used the time to decide what to do next. Neither of us wanted to create major legal trouble for the store or the manager, but we did want an apology. Since my friend would likely still have her tablet if not for the manager's intervention, we also wanted some significant compensation. In his rage, the manager had acted prejudiced, but if he were truly discriminatory, he probably wouldn't hold that position. When bad experiences, anger, and frustration cloud someone's judgment, punishing someone who tries not to be prejudiced wouldn't help combat discrimination. However, we shouldn't lose anything because of it. We expected to wait a long time for the police and possibly have some arguments with them, as self-defense against a manager and holding him back is a bit unusual. Yet, luckily, 2 officers arrived rather quickly. They didn't fully follow protocol, but I can't really blame them. Police Officer 1. You better have a very good explanation for this. Yeah, right? We'd better have one. As a big guy, they likely assumed they should talk to me first. It seemed reasonable. Security guard. They are acting within their rights by holding back the manager until you arrive. Me. Good afternoon, officer. The security guard is right. We held back the manager until you arrived. While it would be unusual to hold someone for making inappropriate comments. Stupid manager. That wasn't hate speech. I just said that because. Police Officer 2. Sir, I would advise you to stop talking before you incriminate yourself. Me. Oh, it wasn't about the inappropriate comments. It was about 2 false accusations. Let's not focus on those comments just yet. But I'd like to give you some context. May I show you a brief video recording unofficially first? Police Officer 1. Yes, that's okay. I showed him my video recording, focusing on Karen's part. Me. That's why my friend called you. Would you be so kind as to let her report that crime? After that, we can discuss what happened next. But I didn't stop the video yet. Police Officer 1 was okay with that, but still kept an eye on us and the video. I then turned to the manager, but Police Officer 2 paid more attention to our conversation. Me. Now, let's talk about your behavior. Stupid manager. I told you, I'm not discriminatory. Police Officer 2. You aren't? Then why don't we have the stolen tablet and the thief here? Why did you accuse the victims? I haven't heard an apology from you, and you aren't trying to make things right. Yet they're still giving you chances to fix this without making it worse for yourself. Stupid manager. But he quickly learned it would be better for him if he compensated us for the lost tablet, the lost data, and his behavior. If the police got involved officially and his bosses found out, it would be much worse for him. He would likely spend far more on lawyers than what he would need to pay us to make the problem go away. At first, he offered to buy a new tablet since we lost one and some expensive drinks to apologize for his behavior. But it ended up with us getting a tablet of our choice within a reasonable range, which still turned out to be a significant upgrade over the lost one. The new tablet was a Surface, and it was the right choice. Story 2. So, this all started a few months ago when an insurance company began investigating our shop for what they suspected was insurance fraud. Apparently, there was a car with a bad engine that got replaced, but the engine we put in was later found out to be stolen. We had no idea about that at the time, and the cops confirmed it wasn't our fault, but the insurance company didn't seem to care. They were all over us. A few weeks ago, I was outside and noticed something odd on my old truck. Now, let me tell you, this truck is filthy. I never wash it, so a clean spot on it really stood out. I went over to check it out and found a GPS tracker stuck to it. I had no plans to keep the truck much longer anyway. I was going to ship it down to Mexico in the spring and get rid of it there. I told my friend about the tracker, and he said he'd take care of it when he picked up the truck. A few days later, he took the truck into the most cartel-infested place in Sonora, Mexico, and disabled the tracker right there. That should have been the end of it, or so I thought. In the meantime, I had already gotten myself a new truck, registered under someone else's name, so I was using that to drive around to parts stores and dealers. One day, as I was leaving a dealer, a clean-cut guy approached me. "Private detective, excuse me, do you own an old truck?" "Me, I used to." "Why?" "Private detective. I'm a private detective working for an insurance company, and I'm curious about what happened to that truck." I couldn't resist cracking a joke. "Me, sometimes it wanders off at night, but it usually comes back when it's down to a quarter tank, usually in about 6 to 8 months. He didn't find that funny. His expression changed, and he got more serious. "Private detective, where might the truck physically be right now?" That's when I decided to let him know that I knew exactly what was going on. "Me, oh, you mean the truck with the GPS tracker?" "Yeah, I found that thing." His face dropped. He knew he'd been caught, and his tone shifted. "Private detective, I need that tracker back." He sounded like a kid who just got his favorite toy taken away. But I wasn't about to just hand it over. "Me, the truck's in Mexico now. I can give you the address where it is and the name of the person you need to talk to about getting it back." He realized he couldn't call the cops because he'd likely get himself arrested for the whole situation, but he still tried to push. "Private detective, I really need that GPS back." "Me, you can get it back yourself, but it's in Mexico now. Good luck with that." That was the last I saw of him. A few days later, we found another GPS tracker on a different truck at work. We figured they were still snooping around, thinking we had some kind of huge stash of stolen car parts. But the reality is, all our stuff comes from legitimate dealers and scrapyards. We weren't going to let them keep tracking us, so we took that second GPS out to the desert and blew it up. I'm pretty sure they're still out there, trying to figure out what's going on, but all they're going to find is a wild goose chase. So, that's the story of how we turned the tables on an insurance company that thought they could mess with us. They tried to play dirty, but we knew how to play the game better. Story 3. So, this wild story happened at my kid's school, and let me tell you, it's straight out of a TV drama. I'm still shocked it actually happened in real life. It all started with the wife of this lawyer power couple. Both she and her husband were well known in our town, big-shot lawyers who thought they were above everyone else. Their son goes to the same school as my kids, and the wife would often pick him up. She always had this air about her, like she was too good to talk to the rest of us mere mortals. One day, the president of the Parent-Teacher Association, Tot, who's a sweet lady and always volunteering at the school, was helping with the after-school pickup. The lawyer's son was apparently a little slow to line up, which the top president noticed. She made a quick, innocent remark to the wife when she came to pick him up, saying something like, "He was just a bit slow to line up today. Sorry for the delay." It was nothing more than a polite apology. But, oh boy, did that set the wife off. She didn't say much in the moment, just gave a cold, tight-lipped smile, but you could tell she was fuming inside. And instead of just letting it go, she went home and cooked up an insane revenge plan with her husband. Fast forward a few weeks, and the top president gets pulled over by the police right after leaving the school. The officer who stopped her says they got an anonymous tip that she was carrying something illegal in her car. She's stunned, of course, and lets them search her car, knowing full well she's got nothing to hide. To everyone's shock, they find illegal substances stashed in the back seat. The top president is mortified. She's insisting she has no idea how it got there, and the officer can tell something's off about the whole situation. He's got that gut feeling, you know? Like, why would this well-respected woman suddenly be involved in something so shady? It just didn't add up. The officer decides to investigate further instead of just taking the situation at face value. He starts digging, and the more he looks into it, the more things don't make sense. Meanwhile, the top president is losing it. Her reputation is on the line, and she's scared out of her mind. Now, the officer gets some security footage from around the school, and guess what? There's footage of the lawyer husband lurking around the parking lot earlier that day. And after some more digging, they find out that the call tipping off the police about the drugs was made from a burner phone. Turns out that phone had been bought with cash from a convenience store near the law firm where the husband worked. The pieces were starting to come together. The officer, smart guy that he is, decides to talk to the top president again, this time about who might have a reason to set her up. She remembers that awkward conversation with the lawyer's wife and mentions it to him. That's when it all starts to make sense. The wife must have been so ticked off by that innocent comment that she decided to ruin the top president's life. Eventually, with enough evidence piling up, they confront the husband and wife. Of course, they try to lawyer their way out of it, but the evidence is too strong. They get arrested, charged with planting the drugs, and a bunch of other charges related to the setup. It's all over the news, this high-powered lawyer couple taken down by their own stupidity and pettiness. The husband ends up getting fired from his $400K a year job, where he was an equity partner at a fancy law firm. His wife? Turns out, she wasn't even working and was completely dependent on him for money. To make matters worse, during the investigation, it comes out that she was having an affair on the side. Talk about adding insult to injury. Both of them have their law licenses suspended, and their lives pretty much fall apart. But it doesn't end there. The top president, rightfully furious, files a civil suit against them. And guess what? She wins. The court orders the couple to pay her $5.7 million. The best part? The wife's father might also be on the hook for part of that judgment, because the couple tried to hide their assets by transferring their property into his name right before the trial started. So, in the end, this power couple's ridiculous scheme to get back at someone for a tiny, innocent comment blew up in their faces spectacularly. They lost their careers, their money, and their reputations, all because they couldn't handle a simple remark about their kid being slow to line up. Story 4. A few years ago, my sister and her friend had a run-in with this girl from school. We'll call her Rosie. Rosie was one of those kids who just couldn't leave others alone. Every day, she would pester and harass my sister and her friend. It went on until one day, my sister finally snapped. They were out on the playground, and Rosie was at it again. My sister, who had had enough, pushed Rosie down into the bark. Rosie ran off crying, and my sister thought that would be the end of it. But, oh man, she was wrong. Later that day, my sister and her friend were walking home from school, taking their usual route down a main road. Suddenly, a car pulled up beside them, and who should be inside but Rosie and her raging father. The guy looked furious. He started yelling at my sister and her friend, accusing them of bullying his daughter. Rosie's father, "You think you can bully my daughter? I'm not going to let you get away with this." Now, keep in mind, my sister and her friend were only 11 years old at the time. They were terrified. They didn't know how to deal with an angry adult screaming at them from a car. So, they did the only thing they could think of. They ran. They sprinted across the road and into a side street where my sister's friend lived, hoping to get away from this maniac. But Rosie's father wasn't done with them yet. He whipped his car around and sped down the main road, practically drifting into the side street. He screeched to a halt right in front of my sister's friend's house, jumped out of the car, and started shouting at them again. Rosie's father, "I'm going to kick your head in. I'm going to kill you both." Imagine being 11 years old and having a grown man scream death threats at you. My sister was scared out of her mind. She called me in a panic. I was 14 at the time, and even though I couldn't drive, I ran as fast as I could to get to them while calling the police. Meanwhile, a bystander who had seen what was going on came over and stepped in to defend my sister and her friend. Rosie's father didn't yell at the bystander, but you could see he was seething with anger. Realizing he was attracting more attention than he wanted, he finally got back in his car and sped off. Just as I arrived, my dad showed up too, along with the police. We all arrived at the same time, and the police took statements from everyone. We found out the guy's name, and a court date was set up to deal with what had happened. A few days later, my dad happened to pass by the same guy in his car. My dad noticed he had shaved his beard, probably thinking it would help him avoid being recognized in court. Little did he know, it wasn't going to make a difference. When the court hearing came around, things were going badly for us at first. The judge seemed to be leaning in favor of Rosie's father, probably because he was putting on a good show of being concerned for his daughter. But then, the bystander who had defended my sister and her friend got up on the stand. She told the court exactly what had happened that day, how he had screamed at two terrified little girls. Bystander, he was yelling at those poor girls, saying he'd kick their heads in and even threatened to kill them. Rosie's father, yes, exactly, I didn't shout at you. The courtroom went silent. His lawyer put his head in his hands like he couldn't believe what he just heard. Judge, so you admit you were there? The guy just went silent, realizing he had just confessed to being at the scene. It was all over for him at that point. The judge didn't need to hear anything else. In the end, Rosie's father was given a criminal record and sentenced to 6 months in jail. He was only in his early 30s, but the police told us afterward that he was going to have a hard time finding a job in the future with that record hanging over him. I couldn't help but grin when I heard that. The guy had tried to intimidate and bully 2 little girls, and it backfired on him spectacularly. Justice was served, and Rosie's father got exactly what he deserved. Story 5. A few years ago, when I was a student, I lived in a shared house with 5 other people. We each had our own rooms, but there were 2 bathrooms that we had to share. There was also a smaller third space, a tiny room with just a shower and a small sink and vanity. Honestly, it was the smallest and least attractive room in the house. Being an old house, it had its share of mildew and damp patches, which could get pretty bad in the winter. But despite that, it had the best shower pressure, so I preferred to use it for my showers. About a month after my friend moved out and another girl moved in, I started noticing that I was running out of shampoo and conditioner more quickly than usual. Now, everyone kept some personal belongings in the bathrooms, but it was usually easy to identify whose items were whose, and sometimes people would label their things. It was understood that if you wanted to use or borrow something, you should ask first. At first, I didn't think much of it. I just assumed I was using more product than usual. I always washed my hair at night, and at that time, I had a late-night job. I figured I was probably just tired after classes during the day and work at night, and I wasn't paying attention to how much product I was using. The tiny vanity in that smaller shower room had an even tinier cupboard, and inside it, I kept a small pink basket with some of my other toiletries. I became certain that someone was using my beauty products when I noticed that my glass pot of face cream had been used, and the lid wasn't screwed on properly. I have quite sensitive skin, and the face moisturizer I used was expensive. You only need a small amount, but someone had clearly dug deep into it. For me, that cream was like gold, given how expensive it was to buy. I was always careful to screw the lid back on properly, storing it a certain way to make sure it didn't leak or spill. I had a suspicion that the new girl was the one using my stuff. She used the smaller bathroom since it was right next to her room. My shampoo also has a very distinct smell, and one night, as she sat near me, I was pretty sure I could smell it on her. When I found my face cream had been dug into yet again, I decided to set a trap. I had a bottle of gradual fake tan, so I scraped the face cream out of its original pot and stored it elsewhere. Then, I squeezed some of the fake tan into the face cream jar. The fake tan cream was white, just like the face cream, and the more you used it, the darker your skin gradually became. so I put the jar back in its place in my basket and waited. I checked the jar regularly, and it was definitely being used. Over the next few weeks, I watched as the new girl's face started to subtly darken and take on an orange hue until she finally noticed and stopped using my face cream. After that, my shampoo and conditioner remained untouched. I moved out of that house a while ago, but from time to time, I still see the girl around. Whenever I bump into her, it always makes me smile. Story 5. Last week, my husband and I went shopping. We came out of one store and wanted to head to another, which was on the other side of the parking lot. We had just bought a set of outdoor table and chairs, packed into 4 heavy boxes, and I suggested that I should drive the car over to the store to make it easier to load them up. Husband: why do you need to move the car? That's lazy. Me: it's a long walk with heavy boxes. It'll be easier to drive the car over. Husband: I can't believe I married someone so lazy. He kept at it, calling me lazy and saying he didn't realize he had married someone who couldn't even carry a few boxes across a parking lot. Despite trying to explain my side, he was adamant that I was being lazy. I ended up moving the car because there was no way I was going to hurt my back carrying all that heavy furniture. But even while we were waiting in line, he kept berating me, saying I was lazy and pushing me for a reaction. Eventually, I got fed up and walked out of the store without the table and chairs because I couldn't stand his constant badgering. Today, we went back to the same store to get the table and chairs. This time, he offered to go inside while I went into another store nearby. A little while later, my phone rang. Husband: there are no trolleys. Can you drive the car over? Me: did I hear you right? You want me to move the car? Isn't that lazy? He started getting upset, but I wasn't going to let this one slide. I reminded him that moving the car was lazy, just like he said last time. He realized he didn't have a leg to stand on and had to carry each box separately from the store to the car. That meant 4 trips back and forth, and each time he asked me to move the car, and each time I just said, "That's lazy?" I didn't realize I married someone so lazy. By the time he was done, he was exhausted and frustrated, but I didn't feel the least bit sorry for him. I figured it was a small taste of what I've had to put up with. Now, just to clarify for those wondering, the furniture isn't even for us. It's for my parents. And as for those of you who might be speculating about the state of our marriage, you're not wrong to wonder. I contacted my lawyer about a divorce 10 days ago. This petty revenge happened yesterday. I'm just waiting for the paperwork to be finalized so I can serve him with the divorce papers. To be honest, things have gotten worse lately. He's started threatening me with violence if I don't comply with what he wants. He's treated me terribly for far too long, and no matter how many times I've communicated with him about it, he hasn't changed. His recent threats show me that he doesn't care about me at all. I'm done begging him to treat me better. I deserve better. If that makes me a jerk, then so be it. Now for a quick update, since I'm not sure I'll post another one. The divorce papers came in on Wednesday evening, and I handed them to him yesterday morning. It's now Friday morning as I'm writing this. My brother, 2 of his friends, both of my husband's parents, and his brother were present. We even had the police on standby. Only my brother and his friends knew what was about to happen. They were waiting outside in case things got out of hand, and thank goodness they did. My husband completely lost it. He started punching holes in the walls, ripping doors off the hinges, destroying my things, and even threatened to kill me and himself. He tried to get to the kitchen to grab a knife, but luckily the police arrived in time and arrested him. His parents were shocked. They had no idea he was capable of such behavior. They've been sending me apology messages ever since, saying they didn't know what he had become. I sent them the voice recordings I had from the past few months, where he had been threatening me, and explained how he'd changed since our wedding day. The house we live in is rented, so all the damage will need to be fixed. The lease is up in 6 months, but I'll be requesting to terminate the contract early and look into buying my own place far away from him.